On the surface, there was nothing unusual about the street. The houses were close together, lawns trimmed, driveways quiet. Every morning, children walked to school along those sidewalks. Parents rushed to work. Neighbors waved. Life moved forward the way it always did. Inside one of those homes lived an 8-year-old boy named Gabriel. To most people, Gabriel Fernandez was invisible. Just another child in a crowded school district. Another name on a classroom list. Another case file in a system built to manage thousands. But inside Gabriel's body, something was deeply wrong. He was not hiding it. He came to school with bruises, with cuts, with marks that did not belong to a child. Teachers noticed. School staff noticed. Other students noticed. And Gabriel did what children are taught to do. He asked for help. Sometimes he whispered it. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he wrote it down. He told adults he was afraid to go home. He told them he was being hurt. He told them he did not feel safe. These were not secrets discovered years later. They were warnings spoken out loud. They were documented. And that is what makes this story unbearable. Because Gabriel did not disappear quietly. He was seen. He was heard. He was recorded. And still nothing changed. Gabriel Fernandez was born into instability long before anyone began paying attention. From an early age, his life was shaped by neglect, broken relationships, and the absence of consistent protection. He moved between caregivers. Sometimes he was placed with relatives. Sometimes he was removed. Sometimes he was sent back. Eventually, Gabriel was placed in the care of his biological mother, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend, Isaro Aguirre. On paper, it was a reunification. In reality, it was the beginning of the worst chapter of his life. Inside that home, Gabriel was treated differently from the other children. He was isolated, targeted, punished. He was called names, forced to stand for hours, denied food. The abuse was not hidden behind locked doors and soundproof walls. It happened in a neighborhood full of people. It happened while others were watching. Gabriel arrived at school exhausted, hungry, covered in injuries. He wore long sleeves even when it was hot. He flinched when adults raised their voices. He avoided eye contact. Teachers did not ignore this. They reported it. Again and again. School officials followed protocol. They documented bruises. They took notes. They contacted Child Protective Services. Welfare checks were scheduled. Caseworkers arrived at the home. They spoke to the adults. They looked around. And then they left. Time after time, the home was cleared. Each visit reset the clock. Each visit erased what had come before. The system treated every report as if it existed in isolation. Patterns were missed. Connections were ignored. Gabriel, the child at the center of every report, was left behind. When caseworkers asked questions, the answers came from the very people accused of hurting him. Those answers were accepted. Gabriel's words were not. This is where many child abuse cases fail, not because no one notices, but because authority is believed before vulnerability. Despite the abuse, Gabriel kept going to school. That matters. He didn't run away. He didn't disappear. He didn't give up. He showed up. And each day he came with new injuries. Teachers began documenting more urgently. Counselors raised alarms. Staff members begged for intervention. At one point, Gabriel wrote a note that made his fear unmistakable. He said he was afraid of being killed. This was not an imagination. This was not an exaggeration. It was a child describing his reality. And still, he was sent home. Every afternoon. Back into the same environment. Back to the same people. Back to the same danger. The paper trail in Gabriel's case is extensive. There are photographs, incident reports, emails, notes from interviews. Everything a system requires to prove awareness exists. And yet, awareness did not lead to action. Each agency operated within its own boundaries. Each worker followed procedure. Each visit ended with the same conclusion. No immediate danger was found. The words on paper contradicted the injuries on Gabriel's body. But paper carried more weight. The adults harming Gabriel were given repeated benefit of the doubt. Gabriel was not. As time passed, the abuse intensified. Gabriel was beaten more frequently. He was burned. He was shot with BB guns. He was starving. He was forced to eat cat litter. Forced to sleep in a cabinet. Forced to stand until his legs gave out. These were not moments of lost control. They were sustained acts of cruelty. And still, the system remained focused on compliance rather than protection. Visits were logged. Boxes were checked. Gabriel stayed. What makes Gabriel's story different from many others is not the abuse itself. It is the number of chances the system had to stop it. Teachers raised red flags. School administrators escalated concerns. Reports were filed. Again and again. But no one removed Gabriel from the home. No one intervened in a meaningful way. Silence stretched, not because no one spoke, but because no one acted. On May 22, 2013, emergency responders were called to the home. Gabriel Fernandez was found unresponsive. Paramedics attempted resuscitation. It was unsuccessful. Gabriel was pronounced dead at the scene. He was 8 years old. The condition of his body made one thing immediately clear. This was not sudden, and this was not accidental. An autopsy was conducted. The results were severe. Gabriel had multiple broken ribs, a fractured skull, severe internal bleeding, burns, BB gun wounds, extensive bruising and blunt force trauma. The injuries showed long-term abuse, not a single incident. Medical examiners concluded that Gabriel died from blunt force trauma, combined with starvation and prolonged physical abuse. This was homicide. Pearl Fernandez and Isaro Aguirre were arrested. They were charged with first-degree murder, child abuse causing death, torture, other felony counts related to abuse. Investigators determined that Pearl Fernandez allowed the abuse. Isaro Aguirre carried out most of the physical violence. Both were responsible. The home was no longer a question. It was the crime scene. In court, the evidence was extensive. Prosecutors presented school reports, photographs of injuries, medical records, testimony from teachers and staff, documentation from Child Protective Services. Many of these documents had existed before Gabriel died. They were not new discoveries. They were warnings that had already been logged. Teachers testified that Gabriel repeatedly asked for help. He told them he was being hurt. He told them he was afraid. Those statements were entered into evidence. The jury heard them for the first time, but the system had heard them years earlier. In 2018, Isaro Aguirre was convicted of first-degree murder. He was initially sentenced to death. Later, his sentence was commuted to life without parole after changes to California's death penalty law. Pearl Fernandez pleaded guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the people who hurt Gabriel directly, accountability arrived. But the case did not end there. Public attention turned to Child Protective Services. For county social workers were charged with felony child abuse, falsifying records. The charges were based on allegations that warning signs were ignored, reports were mishandled, home conditions were misrepresented, prior injuries were minimized. For the first time, it appeared that the system itself might face consequences. The cases against the social workers went to court. Defense attorneys argued that the workers followed procedure. They did not directly cause Gabriel's death. Errors did not rise to the level of criminal liability. Eventually, the charges were dismissed. No social worker went to prison. No criminal conviction was secured against the system. Mistakes were acknowledged. Failures were documented. But legal accountability stopped. After the case, internal reviews were conducted. They revealed missed warning signs, poor communication between agencies, inadequate follow-up, overworked and understaffed departments. These findings were not unique. They matched problems already known inside child welfare systems across the country. Gabriel's case did not expose a hidden flaw. It confirmed an existing one. Many children suffer abuse without ever being seen. Gabriel was not one of them. He was seen, heard, documented, reported multiple times. This is what separates his case from many others. The system did not lack information. It lacked action. Investigators later identified key failures. Each report was treated independently. Patterns were not tracked. Responsibility was fragmented. No one had full ownership of the case. Everyone did their part. No one stopped the harm. Gabriel remained in the home until the end. No emergency removal occurred. No sustained protection was put in place. Despite the warnings, despite the injuries, despite the fear expressed by the child himself, the system closed cases. The abuse continued. When the trials ended, the legal system closed its files. Pearl Fernandez will never leave prison. Isaro Aguirre will never leave prison. On paper, the case reached resolution. But the questions that followed were larger than sentencing. Because punishment answered who caused the harm. not why the harm was allowed to continue. After Gabriel's death, reviews were ordered. Agencies acknowledged failures. Training programs were revised. New protocols were discussed. But no system can undo what already happened. For Gabriel, reform arrived too late. And for the people who were supposed to protect him, consequences stopped at documentation. That reality matters, because it sends a message about where responsibility ends. Many abused children suffer in silence. Gabriel did not. He spoke. He showed evidence. He asked for help. Multiple adults knew something was wrong. This case is not about missed signs. It is about ignored ones. That distinction is important. This story is uncomfortable because it removes easy explanations. You can't say no one noticed. You can't say there was no warning. You can't say the system lacked information. Everything required to save Gabriel already existed. What was missing was action. Children are taught to trust adults, to speak up, to tell someone, to believe help will come. Gabriel did exactly that. The adults around him followed procedures. They filled out reports. They closed cases. But protection never came. Trust without action is not protection. Gabriel Fernandez's name continues to appear in discussions about child welfare reform for a reason. Not because his case was rare, but because it was preventable. His story forces one central question. What is the purpose of a system if it cannot act when harm is clearly visible? That question does not belong only to agencies. It belongs to communities, to institutions, to anyone who witnesses suffering and looks away. Gabriel should be alive. He should be older now. He should have grown up. He should have had a future. Instead, his name exists as a reminder of what happens when warnings are treated as paperwork and urgency is postponed. Remembering Gabriel means more than knowing what happened to him. It means refusing to accept silence as an answer. Gabriel Fernandez asked for help. He trusted the people around him to listen. They did. But listening was not enough. Protection never came. Thank you for watching Silent Evidence, True Crime Exposed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for another chilling true story.